things over to you.
Sure. I just want to thank everyone for joining us for our Network and Connect. We're going to talk to members of a team at Columbus North High School, and we're going to explore how their new approach of class cohorts is blending with their consistent implementation of UDL. So I'm Matt Love. I'm joined today, obviously, by Mackenzie, who introduced herself, and my fellow members of the board, or fellow members of the Professional Learning Committee, Janet Good and Kelly Culp. But I do want to give our panelists some time to introduce themselves as well. So now I'm going to pass it off to you three to do the awkward Zoom thing of trying to see who goes first to introduce themselves.
I'll go. My name is David Clark. I'm the principal of Columbus North High School. I would say that Jen Hester is, you're going to find this shocking. She's currently in a meeting with a parent who's not quite happy with some of the things that happened today. So she will be joining us in just a few minutes, but she's not with us at this point.
And then I'm Corey Williams. I am an assistant principal at Columbus North High School, and specifically work with our cohort of students that'll be graduating in 2027. So they are currently freshmen.
All right, thank you. So to let our attendees know how today is going to work, obviously we are recording the video, so hopefully you're watching it now and later. Should you have any questions as we go along, please do drop them in the chat and we will try and take them, take note of them as we go and then try and address them at the end. So I will pass it back to our panelists.
So this slide just gives a little bit of background information about Columbus North High School to give you a general idea of what our school is like. UDL is our instructional framework and guides all of our decision-making and processes, not just at Columbus North, but throughout our whole district. We have just over 2,000 students and 32 different languages spoken. So we are a fairly large school with a large amount of diversity, I would say, especially for Southern Indiana, where we're located. And so we have a lot of different athletic and club opportunities for our students, along with a lot of academic success. And we just recently won an award with the Indiana Department of Education for our work on preparing students for college and careers and increasing the number of minority students taking college-ready courses and the scores they've earned on the AP tests. So we're pretty proud of a lot of the work that we do around diversity, but also with we kind of give a lot of the credit to the work that we do around UDL.
So as we go along, I will also sort of be your narrator, asking questions to help guide the conversation. So thank you for the introduction. Can you tell us a little more about what got you started with the class cohort model? So what is it? First, I guess, can you tell us what the class cohort model is?
So the cohort model really has to do with having a team of adults centered around one group of students. So there's one team of adults for each grade level at our high school, so 4 different teams. And then that team will stay with that group of students all 4 years. So I'm with the current freshman cohort and I will move with them to their sophomore year, junior year, and then through graduation, their senior year. And so once a group graduates, so our current senior group, they'll graduate in May. That team will loop back down and pick up our current 8th graders or our incoming freshmen for next year. And so what this allows us to do is really have an intentional focus on building relationships with that group of students and their families. So we can really get to know the story of each individual student because we're going to be with them for 4 years, all through their high school journey.
And there's a nice representation of the cohort model.
So
can you talk a little more about the composition of the teams as well?
Yeah, so each team has an assistant principal. So like I'm the assistant principal for the current freshmen. Jen Hester is the assistant principal for the sophomores. Raylan Nolteen is with the juniors and Levi Simpson is with the seniors. And so we're kind of in charge of major discipline. We have a lot of the normal admin type duties like observations. But then with this role, we have a focus on data as well. And then general admin responsibilities. And then with us on that team, we each have a counselor, 2 academic coaches, and an admin assistant. And so this whole group works together and stays together all 4 years while the students move through. And so students can kind of see any one of us, visit any one of us for whatever needs they have. And we all just kind of collaborate around each student.
I might throw in here and add in here, each of you will have your own school makeup, demographics. And as you look at this, we may be a little different than what you might want to be. For example, the school that we visited and took in some information from just north of us here in Indiana, their composition had 2 counselors and 1 academic coach. You know, we just we had to talk it through and figure out what we felt like was best for our particular group. You know, it may depend on the number of counselors, may depend upon the number of students you have in the cohort and what you want that student to counselor ratio to be. So what we're showing you is our model, but certainly as you look at it and have conversations around it, you will look to see what's best for your local situation. And I would just say, keep that in mind as you go through here.
All right, thank you both. So thinking about what led to your decision to implement this model, can you give us a little bit of background and to what led to that decision?
Well,
So,
let me jump in,
David.
let me jump in, Corey. Just frankly, we do, you know, not wanting to toot our own horn, right? We do well in a lot of areas. We were struggling in our graduation rate. We were struggling with things that just didn't, you know, our kids being the top in so many things and doing extremely well on AP exams and SAT scores and ACT scores, but we weren't seeing the graduation rates that we wanted. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that, and some of it we can say is, you know, because of our diversity and the movement of students in and out that return home to China or Japan or, you know, South America, we lose some of that, but our state Department of Ed doesn't recognize the fact that these kids are going back to schools in Japan or China. So that's part of our graduation rate, but that sounds like an excuse. We weren't doing what we wanted to do with our graduation rate. That probably is the biggest driver for me. Corey, I don't know what you might add to that.
No, I agree. Our graduation rate and kind of following COVID, where a couple of years past, you'd expect it to start bouncing back. We just weren't bouncing back. And so that was kind of the thing at the district level that they said, okay, we need to take a look at, you know, what's out there, what else could we do? And so a team at the district level got together and kind of looked at schools in the state that had higher graduation rates to look at what they were doing. And this cohort model is what kind of came out of that research. And so David referenced a school visit that took place to one of the other schools in the state who uses this model to learn from them. You know, how did they implement it? What did it look like? What were the benefits, the drawbacks, challenges that they had, so that we could kind of learn from it. And then, like he said, make it our own to implement here at our school.
All right, so two-parter here. What role has UDL played in the development of the systems in place at your school, specifically the cohort model? And then what benefit have you seen from using UDL as an organizing framework in your efforts, just because you have kind of noted that it is one of your guiding frameworks as well?
Yeah, so there's a graphic on the next slide that we like to use to kind of represent a lot of our work that we do here. And so kind of view it as like the cohort model is going to help kind of be that foundation and that base for the supporting students and supporting staff in implementing the systems that we use that all kind of support and help us implement the Universal Design for Learning guidelines, right? So even with this cohort model, thinking about ways that we can utilize the Universal Design for Learning guidelines in the work that we do, because everything that we do goes back to the guidelines. All of our staff are evaluated on the UDL guidelines. So even our academic coaches, they are evaluated on how they implement and use UDL in their role. So everyone in the cohort model system will utilize UDL in their work with students and staff. And then as they also implement the use of our school-wide learning outcomes, which is our qualities of an expert learner, culturally responsive practice, social emotional learning, and then PBIS, which again, all help us implement UDL in all of our environments throughout the district. So this is an example from our teacher success rubric for our academic coaches. For how they're evaluated on UDL. So when they're interacting with students one-on-one, are they working to make things relevant, engaging, help students understand the why? Are they representing the information in multiple ways in their communication with parents? We utilize a tool here called Parent Square that allows parents to set their native language. And so every communication we send home in English automatically gets translated into their native language. So our academic coaches utilizing that in their communication that they send home so that that information comes home to parents in an accessible format. Thinking also about our counselors, the information that they send out. The counselor on my team did a presentation last week and co-presented with one of our Spanish translators. So all of the information was presented in two languages live to the students. So really looking at everything that we do, are we providing options and trying to remove barriers for students and families?
The other piece of that, Matt, I jump in real quick. You see this is straight from our evaluation piece. About 50% of our teachers' evaluation is, are you using UDL principles? We know that what gets measured gets done. And so that's why we put such a heavy emphasis on, we believe in UDL. We believe in what it presents and what it can do for students and for staff. And that's why we give it such heavy weight to that. So what you're seeing is just a portion of it, but it's 50% of the evaluation score.
Yeah, and it leads me to a question that's in the chat, asking about, and sorry to put you on the spot with a question here, but does this model increase or decrease the number of adults supporting your school? Or I guess, does the model with UDL embedded in it make, I guess, adult time or like adult roles more efficient, I guess? Like, could you talk about how the model kind of leads to use of your human capital at school?
Well, I've seen in this, we've been at this 8 weeks now, so we're certainly not experts. There's things we're going to learn from this journey as well. But what I've seen in 8 short weeks is that we have had more parent contacts. We have had more communication with students who are at risk in the first 8 weeks of this year than we probably had all of last year, just because the model, and I'm old school, it's all about the relationships. This model allows you to dig deeper and be more intentional with your relationships with students. With those relationships, then it becomes easier to implement those UDL principles. Once they know that you care about them and that you're willing to do things for them, then they're more receptive to trying. When we say UDL and allowing them to do things, we also stretch them a little bit. So this student has used this particular way of learning or presenting what they know they've learned several times. We'll stop and we'll say, okay, now you got to try a different way. So we want to stretch them as well. So this model, again, I'm talking too much. Let us know who they are and where they can best apply their talents and skills. And it has significantly improved our communication with parents and staff at this point.
Yeah, I think just the fact that we have the specific groups of students to focus on allows us to have that increased number of communication like David was talking about, because we're just so focused in on that group of kids and knowing that we're going to be with them consistently over the years, that has allowed that increase of communication. I think the shift in responsibilities. So we used to have deans, and that role became the academic coaches. And so I think the shift to, in that title and that role, they're not solely focused on discipline, but they do still deal with some minor discipline issues, but they're also focused on the whole picture, right? So it's not just about academics or discipline or attendance. They're really looking at it as a whole package, and what can we do to improve this one area for this student, because that's their need, and increase that, and then learn strategies to use with other students. So I think it just allows us to focus on that one specific population, and then looking at each student, the whole picture, the whole child, and how we can help them.
I'm going to jump in here for just a quick second. Hi, I'm Kelly. I work here as a teacher at Columbus North, and just as someone who has done this for a while, I can tell you that the academic coaches have been reaching out to teachers as well and asking questions and trying to get answers, from us as well. And, like, hey, why is this, grade this way? Or has a student been in class? Or, is there something that we can do to support this student in this way? And, previously, it's not that our staff didn't communicate, but it's much more involved and much more relationship focused in a positive way. And I think we are all seeing benefits from it very quickly.
Thanks. If there's nothing else, I think we can move on to the next question.
Oh, so that last slide was just that our teams, the main focus area for the teams themselves, when we look specifically at the guidelines, is engagement, right? Because they've got to build those positive relationships. Our academic coaches are also working very closely with our students on coping skills and strategies. So if they're having trouble, we're also on block schedule. So 88-minute classes, especially I can say with the freshmen, they're not used to being in class that long. So working with skills and strategies for specific students on how to manage themselves, how to self-regulate to be in a class period that long, and also with the transition to high school where they have a lot more freedom, how they can make the best choices when they have those responsibilities and freedoms. And then also just the why of school, right? Talking to them a lot about why they need to earn credits, why they need to pass these classes. And so I would say our academic coaches really focus in on the engagement to try to help kind of meet some of those needs for students, so that when they get to class, they're able to actually focus and take in the content that the teachers are trying to present to them. Thank
you. You've talked about this a little bit. And like you said, it's been 8 weeks, but the question is directed at students, but I guess what benefits have you noticed? And I know Kelly talked about it from the teacher side, but top down and bottom up, what benefits have you noticed in your class cohort model and the implementation of UDL at your school?
So, and this goes a little bit back to that self-regulation piece. But really the self-regulation and executive functions with the work our academic coaches are doing with the students has been huge. Our academic coaches are able to work with students, and recently they've been working on kind of 2-week cycles. So they'll look at students who aren't passing classes and start meeting them. They pull them out and meet with them one-on-one. And they have a plan that they work with the student and help the student create their own plan for how they're going to bring that grade up and what they need to do. And then every 2 weeks, check back in with that same student and check their progress. So maybe the student had a goal from that first meeting of raising their grade 10%. And so they'll meet back in, see if they've met that goal, set a new goal. And so really helping students be able to set goals and plan and work towards those. And they know there's that accountability that that person is coming back to check on them, that will be sending them messages either on Parent Square or Canvas to check in with them during the 2 weeks. Like, there is that consistency piece that there's somebody there looking and checking. And just that consistency of the adults that we are the group of adults that will be with them. I had a parent meeting this morning of a family that had moved here from out of state and had come from a really small school previously, and were very nervous about coming to a school this size. But in talking to them, and they realized that it's this team that's working with their student all 4 years, they were very excited and relieved to know they had that communication kind of piece at the school that would be consistent. And it's a little bit early to tell for sure on a lot of these, but I think that some of our kind of minor behaviors of tardies to class, and especially some of our freshmen who try to skip classes early in the year. We have an advisory period that attendance the past couple of years has been a little rough. They have somebody checking in with them. If they're absent from a class the day before, we are checking in with them the next day. And so the decrease in repeated behaviors by students, the first time they realize that someone's paying attention and watching, it doesn't happen again for the majority of kids. We've also put into place, because of our ability with our academic coaches now, educational pieces with our kind of consequence steps. So for most things, the first time is a warning. The second time they have to meet with the academic coach, who then talks to them. What happened? What's the issue? Let's make a plan to not have it happen again. And then the third time for some of our offenses is a lunch and learn, where students have an opportunity to come and sit in our large group room during lunch, and they have an instructional video and activities that they do to learn about the behavior and the appropriate behavior, and why they shouldn't be doing the non-appropriate behavior. So I think those pieces that we've been able to build in because of our academic coaches and this teaming model have really helped with some of those behaviors.
We've kind of done this throughout, but what successes do you want to share? Maybe it's like a personal story. You've seen growth in one student. And again, it's early, so I get that these might be a little more anecdotal. And then what areas do you hope to continue to see growth in? What are your priorities? I know you talked about engagement, but what do you hope to see grow over time in this model?
So these were just some of the things that came to mind right away. So at North, our freshmen have to eat on campus, but it's different than a lot of schools where our sophomores through seniors can leave campus for lunch. So freshmen try to leave campus for lunch and sneak out the doors, but we've been able to, with this cohort model, because I know that it's my students who are in the cafeteria during lunch, or who should be, we're able to plan some activities this week. We've got guessing games all week for how many objects are in a container to win prizes. We did one for our rivalry, big football rivalry week early in the year, where the lunch periods competed against each other and we watched a movie. So having that time where it's a team of us that can plan activities to make that time more engaging, and it's not different people, different teachers having to, or as many teachers having to give up time in their day to monitor the cafeteria. It's us, the team that's consistent in there with the students every day, I think has really helped. There's more kids eating in the cafeteria this year than what we've ever seen in the past few years.
Yeah, and I think you poke at some of the other, we've mentioned a little bit about the collaboration. It feels to me like teachers feel like it's more of a a joint effort now. It's not the teachers against the world. Sometimes they get that feeling, and we never want that feeling. It's not something we try to get here. But in this model, I just feel like teachers have a better understanding of what we are trying to do and how we're trying to help, and that just has brought a better camaraderie, collaboration through that process. I spoke about accountability, and that's something we have to go through yet. But in this model, there are certain points, markers about every 9 weeks. These cohort principals will have to meet with the superintendent of schools and the director of secondary ed. And they're going to be asked very pointed questions about, first of all, what is your data? What's your students on track for graduation? What's the number of Fs that you have in your cohort right now? Multiple Fs from students. A variety of data that they're going to have to present to the superintendent and to the director of secondary ed. And then when there's things that we have students that are not, so that speaks to an accountability piece. And then if there are students who aren't achieving very well, and Corey says, well, David Clark he's got 6 Fs and he's not doing very well, they're going to say why. And these cohort principals are going to have to say, they're going to have to be able to tell why. What are the experiences in that student's life, in that individual's life, that is causing what's happening right now? We're going to drill down into getting to know these kids and letting them know we care about them. And that we feel like that is going to help turn the tide and let things begin to move the needle for better attendance rates and better graduation rates.
We have a question in the chat box from Jennifer. Can you speak more about data? How are you collecting? How often is it reviewed? And I think you just touched on that. Quantitative versus qualitative and street data. Is there anything else you want to expand on from her question?
So we have a weekly cohort meeting where every Monday we kind of rotate through the freshman cohort, sophomore, juniors, and seniors have a meeting time. And so weekly we are reviewing that data. We use PowerSchool as our student information system. And then there's a section in there called Performance Matters. And so we have early warning indicators. And so we can pull up our whole list of students. I can pull up all of my freshmen and it'll give me early warning indicators. So if their attendance drops below 95%, if they have a discipline referral, or if they have an F, they will have a little indicator by their name, and I'm able to monitor, and my whole team is able to monitor those students who show up on that early warning indicator. And so part of our meeting time each week is going through those kids that show up on those early warning indicators and talking about each one. We also have a common data sheet. It's a Google sheet that we pull reports, specific reports that are consistent from PowerSchool on FLIS, on attendance, kind of all kinds of information that we're pulling from there that we keep in this Google sheet that we're all able to check and monitor. We put things on there like if they see one of our family support specialists or counselors in the building, or just general information about each kid is housed in one Google sheet. And then the third way we kind of work with data is what David was referencing, those meetings with the superintendent and director of secondary ed. We all have a common sheet that we will create each 9 weeks to pull out the big data points, the highlights, how many credits have been earned, what is our attendance rate, kind of all of that information in a summary page. And so data is looked at weekly. And our academic coaches checking in with the students on those 2-week cycles, they are looking at grades very frequently. So quantitative data is a big part of this.
So we'll connect the dot with that. You asked kind of how are we using it? It's then we connect that dot, which you've already heard. Our academic coaches then take that information and then they're meeting with students, and they know who those are, and they're meeting with them regularly. They're contacting parents regularly. We're doing home visits now at a little higher rate than we used to do, but that's how we're connecting that data to the actual where the rubber meets the road with our students in the classroom. One other thing we have that I don't think was mentioned in our team is what we call iGrad coaches. These are coaches that work with us and the local community college. And their goal is to help get kids focused on life after high school. What's your next step? So there's also another group that helps us work with the students' academics and holding them accountable. So really there's a lot of wraparound services within the school, but also within the community that says this is important to us and we want to make a difference. Because we know these students are going to live, they're going to be our neighbors. They're going to live in our neighborhoods. They're going to, mow grass beside us. By golly, we better educate them. We better get them where they need to be because they're going to be living with us.
How is the reaction from students? Like that,
I
especially
work
the
with
seniors versus the freshmen.
Yeah, I work with mostly the freshmen, so they don't know any different when coming to high school. This is all they'll know of their experience. But I will say personally as a parent, because I have a freshman and a senior child here at school with me. And so my senior hasn't noticed a whole lot of difference with it other than like she knows she has those people. She has the cohort office. We've rearranged our office spaces so each cohort has their space. So she knows that's her space. That's where she needs to go. If she has a question, it kind of doesn't matter the question. She knows that's where she needs to go. So just having that consistent piece is nice for students. They don't have to, do I ask this person? Do I go there? They go to their cohort office and they know they're gonna find help. So my freshmen, it's all they're going to know through their high school experience, which I'm happy about because, they're going to feel that consistency all the way through. So David may have a little bit more about how if he's heard from upperclassmen.
Yeah, and I think most of it's anecdotal at this point. That we've already mentioned that we've made more contacts. We've had more conversation with students. Students have been more willing to share with us things that I think in the past they would not have been willing to share with us in both their personal life and their academic lives. The biggest pushback we've had is that we've also moved, this is our first year requiring lanyards. So each cohort has a lanyard. Seniors our school color is blue, so seniors are blue. And then we have green and we have silver and we have red lanyards. Again, the freshmen really don't know any different, but that's where the upperclassmen have struggled a little bit is why do I have to wear this lanyard? So that's all been couched in school safety, allowing us to identify you quickly, allow us that there may be students who want to sneak into the building for one reason or another, that we can identify you quickly. And that has helped tremendously. But since most of them still have developing prefrontal cortexes, they forget their lanyard at home. They take it off at grandma's at the weekend. And so that's been probably our biggest hiccup or frustration. And then we'll figure that out. Eventually, we really feel like they'll have that figured out. But that's been a struggle for us right now. But I don't know that the kids have really spoken out about the model itself in any negative tone. All I'm hearing is the positive. The outreach that we're getting is positive from the students, but the lanyards, that's the one negative that students don't understand because it scratches their neck or whatever. So
I would add with that piece David reminded me of our academic coaches really the first couple of weeks tried to make an initial touch with every student of something positive. So reached out to just have a conversation about their interests or to learn more about them or have some kind of non-academic, non-behavioral relationship building time, whether that was calling them down. Some went to advisories, which are by grade level, and just had that first initial interaction in a positive relationship building way. And so I think now too, when students come to or get sent or to the cohort office or get a pass to the cohort office, it's not necessarily that like, oh, you're in trouble. so it's a not necessarily a negative thing to have to come down and have a conversation with one of us. At least the feeling of it and the perception of it amongst the students. So I think that has helped things a lot as well.
That's great to hear. We have a couple more questions actually in the box. How is this used to change instruction? And what does a UDL focused instructional planning look like for your school?
So UDL has been a part of our district for such a long time. And we have a UDL facilitator at our building as well. So in terms of instruction, the UDL facilitator really takes the lead on that. But I will say with this model, when we're working with students on things, if we see something within a class or students' grades that we're like, especially some new teachers that we have this year, we're like, hey, I think this would be a great opportunity for the UDL facilitator to come in and observe, do a learning environment design, and kind of work with that teacher. Our academic coaches have had a lot of conversations as well with teachers. When they see students failing the class, hey, what's your makeup work policy? How can we help the student? What does the student need to do to pass? And also when the academic coach learns something about a student shares, that they really need to do something on paper pencil instead of a computer. The academic coach can reach out to that teacher and be like, hey, could we provide this option on this assignment to this student, but really to all of your students? And so really just having those conversations as we get to know our students more through our academic coaches is going to help teachers then further implement UDL in their classrooms.
We also have a comment from Jennifer. I appreciate your focus on building community within your school. It is an important first step in improving student outcomes. Just a question from me is, have you found that you have to do any special onboarding for those students transitioning in from middle school? Are they familiar with the UDL options that they have to access their instruction and engage in instruction, and also with new teachers that come in?
With new teachers, for sure. We have a UDL Institute before school starts. That's a couple of days with external presenters, but also a lot of internal presenters that all of our new teachers are encouraged to attend. And then we also have what's called New Teacher Academy. And so 4 times throughout the year, all of our new teachers have a half-day sub, and they meet as a group with our UDL facilitators and do instructional rounds and professional development around the UDL guidelines. And then we also have 4 professional development days built into our school year. And some portion of that day always revolves around UDL and professional development with UDL. The students, it's what they've always known. We've been at UDL for so long now that they've come up through the whole system. So it's really embedded throughout our whole corporation.
That's very exciting. I've asked, I love the whole child approach, uncommon in high school, sadly. And I asked if anybody else that's joining us today, do you have a similar model, or have you experienced kind of rethinking how we support students within the whole UDL framework? And Matt, I'll toss it back to you.
Yeah, and while we wait for that, I guess a good wrap-up question as we're waiting for comments would be, you talked about it at the beginning, every school is kind of formed a little bit different. You have different resources, different amounts of people. But I think we all have the same goal, which is supporting, the diverse and holistic needs of kids. So what would be your biggest piece of advice to schools that want to do what you're doing, but maybe have a different set of resources? What would be your biggest pieces of advice to them to get started, considering there are large schools, small schools? What are the biggest things people should do to get this model off the ground? And sorry if that was a huge question.
I've never been asked that question, Matt. And again, we're kind of in our infancy still with just 8 weeks in. because it does depend on resources and the underlying current here. We've got, I feel like we're talking about two things here. One is UDL and one is the cohort groups that were, so I don't know of any other schools, and that's just probably just my ignorance, that combine the two, that are doing this cohort model and use UDL as their instructional framework. There may be some out there. I'm not aware of any. So that it makes us unique, I think, in that respect, that relationships have always been important to us. Finding kids where they are and bringing them forward has always been important to us. Moving to this cohort model for us has allowed us to do things we were not allowed to do before. So if there are schools out there that are considering this or thinking about this, that's my biggest testimonial, is that we now have the ability to do things that we would have liked to have done before, but just were not able to do. And so we had a superintendent who supported us and a secondary director of secondary ed who supported this movement and said, this is what we want to do. And it's been great from my perspective that they've allowed us to add an academic coach where we didn't have those before. If you've heard nothing else in this conversation, I'm hoping you heard how valuable the academic coaches are. They're new from the classroom. Most of them are new from the classrooms. They have a lot of energy and they care about these kids. And that is probably the most important role in my mind to transform what we're trying to do, is those academic coaches enjoying what they do and just keep plowing the field, man. Every day they come in and they plow the field. And that's been the biggest blessing for us in transitioning to this model. Corey, I don't know if you'd have anything else you'd want to add to that, but that's what I'd throw in here.
Yeah, I think along those lines of looking at what resources you have and just being creative and thinking outside the box with how you're using them. So, I mean, we had some growing pains with the divisions of tasks. So some things had to change in terms of processes of how we've done things in the past. And some roles shifted and changed a little bit with this cohort model. And so there were some growing pains with that. But I think being willing to think outside the box and reframe how you've done things in the past or how people have been utilized in certain roles is kind of, like you said, with the academic coaches, the role's new. It shifted from that kind of former dean role and has become one of the most valuable parts to this whole process. And so it was looking at how that role was structured in the past and how we could reframe it. And that has turned out to be a huge success for us.
If your question is around, we don't have the resources and we can't go, both feed in on this type of a model right now. If you could only add one thing to that model now to begin your baby steps, I'd say add the academic coach. That'd be the first piece I would put in place. Because if you got the right people there, you're going to make some changes. That needle will start to move.
Great. We do have a couple more questions. Are there specific protocols that your site or district use that support the continuous learning? And looking at your initiatives, how do you blend them with UDL so teachers do not see it as another thing to do?
I mean, I think David referenced this from the beginning when he talked about what's measured is what's done. So that's how teachers are evaluated. And it's really the lens we look through everything with. I mean, when we go through resource adoptions, when we look at materials, we're looking at them through a UDL lens, and our rubric we use to evaluate them is around UDL. So it's just become such a part of our culture that it is what we do. It's not another thing. It's everything, right? It's the lens we look through everything with. And so I think that took a while to get to because we've been working with UDL for so long that in the beginning, it probably did kind of feel like that. But at this point, it is just part of what we do and how we do things. And so I also think framing it as that's the lens that we look through things with. So When we're looking at how we're going to plan a lesson, we're thinking about the guidelines. So I think that's one way that it's kind of not just one more thing for us, because it is the thing.
Let me jump in.
Expectation.
Let me jump in real quick. We have, our overall umbrella is called the Bulldog Way. And underneath the Bulldog Way, we have something most people are familiar with, the PBIS, the Positive Behavioral Instructional Supports.
Sure.
Well, that goes along, that goes along with the Bulldog Way. And then underneath that, we have the habits of mind. I don't know if you're familiar with habits of mind, the 16 habits that if students do these things, then they're going to be more likely to have success. Each one of those habits of mind can be tied back to the Bulldog Way, that PBIS of respect, responsibility, and relationship. So we tie it together by saying Bulldog Way is respect, responsibility, and relationships, which is our PBIS. And underneath that are our 16 habits of mind. And those you then set those side by side with the UDL guidelines, and you can connect those UDL guidelines back to a habit of mind. You can tie them back to the PBIS. And so we're just, are we adding something? Yeah, but they all tie together.
Sure.
Everything goes together. So it's not like it's something completely new.
Right.
And good teachers do these things anyway. They just may not call it universal design for learning, but good teachers have multiple ways that they represent what they teach. Good teachers have multiple ways that they engage students. Most good teachers will have multiple ways that they allow students to show you what they know. That's UDL. So most good teachers are doing these things anyway. You just need to give it a name. And then if you add something like habit of mind or PBIS, just show how they connect.
Sure.
Because they're already connected. And you can tie those together pretty easily that way.
Great. Thank you for that. Another question is, how are students with IEPs supported in this model?
So our special education department is aligning with the cohorts. So because this is our first year and we didn't want to drastically shake up caseloads for students that have been with us for multiple years already, we're really going to work towards these next couple of years of each cohort team. We'll have 2 special education teachers, and they will be the ones that have all of the students with IEPs who are freshmen, or all of the students who have IEPs who are sophomores. And so then our academic coaches will be able to collaborate with the special education teachers on getting to know those students and their stories and what they need. So they're kind of just becoming part of that cohort model. A couple of I think we will have 2 teachers per cohort team.
Wonderful.
We want that to happen more organically, I think, just because of the nature of when you start shifting teacher of record or teacher of service with some students, it throws them off a little bit. So we wanted that to happen a little more organically, but that is in the plans as we move forward, that we will begin to align those.
And the comment was, that's phenomenal. I know I'm going to just put it on record that I would love to hear from you guys again at the end of the year, because this is very exciting. And there is one more question. Is that true for students with moderate to severe disabilities as well? And then I'll toss it to you, Matt.
So our students with moderate to severe disabilities are part of our cohorts and are part of all of our group and activity. The way they structure their classrooms, they will actually be aligned with the cohort model as well, because typically for those students with severe disabilities in their classrooms, they go to a different teacher for each grade level. So they will also be for their homeroom kind of class, they will also be aligned with the cohorts.
Right. We try to be inclusive and get them into classrooms as best we can. And I will say one exception that we have made for students with severe is that tactile piece. That's one group that we've said you don't have to wear the lanyard. Just because there's some tactile issues there, and we're not gonna force that issue for those students who struggle with that.
Great. Well, I want to thank you both for just taking the time. I know finding time at any time of the day during a school day can be difficult. So thank you, and thank you for sharing your experience. I'll echo what Janet said. It'd be great to have you back to just kind of update us. I appreciate your honesty in saying, hey, we're 8 weeks into this. Give us some time and we'll be able to answer those questions a little more deeply. So as the slide says, and I think as we all feel, thank you to both of you for your honesty, your candor, and just taking time out of your day. As a reminder to everyone, this is being recorded. So if you want to look at it later, send it to a friend. You can find it on the IRN website, and it will be accessible via YouTube as well. So I think if there are no further questions, it's good to mention what's in the chat there that says Corey Williams is a rock star, truly. And if there are no further questions, kind of wrap this up, send everyone on their way to enjoy the rest of their Wednesday afternoon. Again, thank you both.
Thank you.